Let's talk about AP itemization. So for pretty much any AP champion, there's like a few core items that have to be in your build, and honestly, the rest of the build revolves around them. So on every AP champion, you're gonna need Deathcap eventually. Now, where you get Deathcap, that's kind of like dependent on what champ you're playing. Another item you're always gonna need is Dark Seal. And then the other item you're always going to need is a percent pen item. So this is like Void, Crypt, or Blood Leopard. So pretty much the game is 6 items or whatever. You're going to need one of these. You're going to need one of these. And you always want to buy Dark Seal. So let's talk about Dark Seal first, because that's one that like comes up all the time and people like misunderstand. So the reason Dark Seal is so OP is because Dark Seal is gold efficient on 0 stacks, right? So even if you're just a 0 stack Dark Seal, it's still a pretty good item. And if you do manage to stack Dark Seal all the way, it's going to give you a total of 55 AP for only 350 gold, which is insane, right? Especially because, like, dude, if you think about it, like, Liandry is 60 AP on a full item, right? So Dark Seal is insane. Like I said, pretty much every single champion, AP champion in the game should buy it. It's compounded even further if you have Deathcap, right? Because, like, that Deathcap is amplifying the Dark Seal AP even further. So that's like non-negotiable. You need percent pen in your build eventually, because as you get later in the game, even if the enemy team doesn't buy Magic Resist, the amount of base MR people get make percent pen pretty much always the highest damage option late game. You can actually go and test this in practice tool, but honestly, a lot of the time these items are actually pretty good early too. Like even as early as second item, they can be good. And then Deathcap, so even if you're a champion with low AP ratios, it eventually just gets to a point where Deathcap is just giving you like so much more damage than any other item that you just have to buy it. Like for most champions, you don't want to delay Deathcap past 4th. Some champs want it earlier, some champs you could maybe delay it a little later, but your build is going to kind of revolve around these things. The only trap here really is be careful buying Dark Seal slightly too early. So even though Dark Seal is really good, if it fucks your second base, it can be like not amazing. So for example, if you really need Lost Chapter for your matchup, right? Or you really need Catalyst for your matchup, then you probably don't want to buy Dark Seal until after it, because like, let's say your first base, you go Dark Seal Boots, right? Well, then the problem you might have is that getting 1200 gold on your second base is really, really, really hard. Whereas like if you go say Amtone Dark Seal or Boots Dark Seal, or sorry, not Boots Dark Seal, like Sapphire Dark Seal. Basically, you can still buy Dark Seal if you can get a component, assuming that you want to rush chapter, because you might not want to, right? Like if you're playing tier, maybe it doesn't matter too much, right? Like tier Dark Seal, I think is fine because you're less reliant on the chapter. So that's kind of like, these are the items that no matter what champ you play, you're going to need those. Now, your first item as an AP champ is normally pretty set in stone. Obviously, this like depends a little bit on like what champ you are. But, you know, for mages, this would be like chapter. It would be chapter item. For assassins, you know, at the moment, it's probably like, I mean, the way to check if you want up-to-date builds is just to go to pro builds and like look at your champ. Like, for example, if you main something like Echo, you can probably see people will be playing like Rocket Belt or Lichbane or whatever. Let's just say it's like, yeah, Rocket Belt. Honestly, this doesn't matter too much for our explanation, but you can go look if you want. So after that, actually, we don't even need to split this. So basically, for AP champs, you have like your first core item. It's going to be, you know, again, a chapter, report about whatever. Now, when you get to your second item, this is like a truly situational item. You know, like probably what you want in here is like you want your Dark Seal somewhere. First core item plus Dark Seal plus at least tier 1 boots. This is kind of like all goes together. You can upgrade tier 2 boots early, but we'll always do that. And then you go for your situational second item. So for your second item, and we'll make a situational items here, there's a whole bunch of them. So there's flat pen options like Shadow Flame, Storm Surge. These are good for like snowballing basically. And they're quite good if you're against like a lot of squishies, you know, like you're playing for burst. They're not super good if you are a champ that really values haste. It's not super good if the fights are going to be going on long. But yeah, like those are pretty good items just for burst. Then there's kind of your CDR options. So there's like Horizon, there's Crypt Bloom, there's even like Rift Maker. What else can you go in here? Cosmic. Basically, the way to choose between these items is, it kind of depends like which stats you actually want, right? Like Cosmic gives you haste while also having HP. But if the HP doesn't help you because you're not taking damage, then it's kind of useless, right? And it's kind of the same with Riftmaker. Like, Riftmaker is really good if you're going to take a lot of damage, but if you're trying to go for something greedier, especially if you're longer range, you probably want one of these, right? Where you give up that health in order to get, like, these other strong items. Then, what else is there? There's, like, Zhonya and Banshee. So, I think Zhonya and Banshee kind of suck, honestly. I think they can be pretty good late game, but I would say overall Zhonya's and Banshees are not very good. And the reason is that there's such a huge damage loss for buying Zhonya or Banshee. Like, if you buy one of these items, you'll live, pretty much guaranteed, but you're going to, like, half your damage output. And that's a big problem because, you know, people always say, I always hear the line of, like, well, you don't do damage if you're dead. But honestly, with a lot of mage builds, like, bro, you don't do damage if you're alive if you build too many tank items. And it's kind of like, you can get health, which is normally better than resist, because health works against both damage types, right? So something like a Liandry or a Cosmic can be like a good option to get good damage without necessarily having to give so much up for it, you know? And then what else have we got? We have Liandry. Liandry, you know, it's good against tanks. You have to be careful because it has no haste, which a lot of the time if you're trying to deal with tanks, you need haste, right? And so having no haste does put you in like a pretty awkward spot where you really have to get a lot of use out of a Liandry to be good. And then there's, I don't know, there's just like random situational items, things like Lichbane that can be really good if you like you need haste and you're ahead and you can hit turrets if the fights are going to go long. I don't know, yeah, what else could be put in here? I don't think we need to be caught up on this too much, but basically, like, if you just go, like, your first core item, and then you kind of choose a situational item, you're going to be in a good spot. Now, this is where AP itemization starts to get kind of, like, difficult, I guess. So, like I said before, it's really, really important that you do not delay Deathcap past 4 items on most champs, and that's because, like, by the time you get to 4 items, Deathcap is basically always going to be the highest damage option, and as you get into that stage of the game, Pen also becomes pretty required. So I'll show you like a couple scenarios that can come up. Let's say that you go situational second item, and then you go another situational third item. So like a common one that you see is like Liandry Cosmic, or, you know, Cosmic Horizon or something like that. So if you can go Deathcap 4th, that's still fine. But the problem you run into is if the enemy team starts to build Matter Resist, and you have to go like Void or Crypt here, now you're kind of fucked because you're gonna get to the point where buying Deathcap 5th item is really, really hard. You just don't have the income, like especially when you can't kill people anymore, right? Like Void is a hard item to build, especially because, you know, you can't kill these guys that have Magic Resist, right? And so it's gonna be really hard for you to complete this item, and then you're gonna get stuck without Deathcap, and you're just going to be like sitting on 400 AP, and it almost doesn't matter what these items are, you're just kind of cooked. So in that situation, if you think the enemy team's going to build Matter Resist, because either they're tanky, or your team has a lot of AP, or whatever, then what you need to do is you need to either go Void and then Deathcap, or you need to go Deathcap and then Void, kind of depending on like, you know, do you have high Dark Shield stacks, like how much AP do you have, what kind of bases you get, how much Matter Resist do they have already, like that kind of stuff, basically. So I would say if you want like a standard build, this is like the easiest one to not get wrong. Now you can do some other stuff, like you can, for example, go Crypt 2nd, and then Deathcap 3rd, and then like a situational item 4th. Like that works out fine too. But the most important things for getting right are making sure you have a Dark Seal, because without it, you're going to lack a lot of AP. And then making sure that you have Deathcap by 4 items, and if you're going to need Void early, that you get it. I think those are what most people get wrong. So the very common one I see is, and probably the most common mistake, is people doing this. I see this all the time on Ari, actually. People go like, say, Malignant, so let's just say chapter item, and then they're like, okay, I want to go situationally Lichbane. Okay, great. We can go Lichbane. And then after this is where things start to go wrong. So the common mistake I see is people going this. They'll be like against tanks, and they'll be like, okay, like I want Lichbane because I want the haste. And then they'll buy Liandry, and because they're thinking like, okay, like I'm against a tank, like I can just go Liandry and be really strong. But now you're actually fucked, because if you're against a tank, you're going to need Pen, but also you need Deathcap. And so you get to this point where you just do like no damage whatsoever. Like if your build looks like this, if they don't have Matter Resist, that's fine. But dude, if you're versus a tank and you end up like, you know, you can't kill the tank, you can't get any gold, so you have no money, it takes you forever to get Void, and then you can't get Deathcap, then you're like well and truly cooked. It's really easy to overcomplicate AP itemization. It's definitely an easy thing to get wrong. But ultimately, as long as you are buying Dark Seal, you're getting Deathcap by 4 auth item, and you're getting percent pen if you need it early, and otherwise just making sure it's in your full build at some point, you should be fine.